I never thought a wedding, my own sister's wedding, would become the stage where my life unraveled in front of 200 people and the entire internet. My name is Madison Hayes. I'm 32 years old, and what happened that night still burns in my memory like a wound that refuses to close. They say family is supposed to be your safe place, but for me, family has always been a battlefield. That morning, I arrived at the Grandview Hotel early 3 hours before the ceremony. The ballroom glittered with white roses and golden accents, exactly what Sophia, my younger sister, had dreamed of since we were children. I'd contributed $50,000 to make her fantasy possible, though of course no one mentioned that. To them, Sophia was the princess, the golden daughter, while I was just the career-obsessed older sister, too cold, too masculine, too difficult. Madison, finally. My mother's voice cut through the air, her eyes raking over me like a critic at a fashion show. That dress! Couldn't you have chosen something more feminine? You look like you're heading to a board meeting, not your sister's wedding. I smoothed down the navy silk. Elegant, professional, maybe too understated for her taste, but it was me. Good morning to you too, Mom, I said evenly, though she ignored my greeting. She turned toward Sophia, glowing in her bridal gown. Now that is a proper bride. She gushed her pride so blinding it almost hurt to look at. It had always been like this. For 32 years I was the daughter who reached too high, wanted too much, chose ambition over tradition. Sophia, on the other hand, was the embodiment of everything they valued, soft, accommodating, family-oriented. And yet, none of them really knew me. Not that I was vice president of development at Hayes Capital, overseeing expansion across Asia Pacific. Not that I'd paid in full in cash for my penthouse overlooking the city skyline. To them, my life was a little apartment, a modest existence compared to the fairy tale they painted around Sophia. As relatives whispered and laughed. Still no ring on Madison's finger. She's too picky. Poor Carol. At least she has Sophia. I kept arranging centerpieces, hands steady, even though their words sliced into me like glass. I could have told them the truth, pulled up Architectural Digest where my home was featured, bragged about closing multi-million-dollar deals. But what was the point to prove myself to people who had already decided I wasn't enough? Then I overheard it, my parents' voices not lowered enough for me to miss. My father Richard said confidently, "After the toast, we'll announce the penthouse. She won't dare refuse in front of everyone." My blood turned cold. It wasn't generosity, it was an ambush. They had planned to trap me, to force my hand under the weight of social pressure and family obligation. The ceremony passed in a blur, my mind stuck on that whispered plan. When the reception began and the music softened, my father stood with a champagne glass in hand. Before we continue celebrating, he announced Carol, and I want to give Sophia and Brian something special. His smile cut me like a knife. That's why we're thrilled to announce that Madison has graciously agreed to give her city penthouse as a wedding gift. The ballroom erupted in applause. Guests gasped, clapped, even wiped tears from their eyes at such generosity. Sophia pressed her hands to her chest, feigning surprise, though her sly smile betrayed that she already knew. My stomach dropped. Every eye turned toward me. I stood frozen. My father gestured. "Come up here, Madison. Let's have the whole family together for this special moment." I managed only 4 words. "I'm sorry, what?" The room quieted, whispers rippling like waves. "Your penthouse sweetheart," Dad said. "For Sophia and Brian." This wasn't discussed with me, I replied, my voice sharp but calm. Murmurs spread, judgmental eyes pinning me in place. Selfish, difficult, cold. My mother grabbed the microphone. "It's a wedding gift from the family," she declared. "It's my property," I said, clear enough for the microphone to catch. "And I haven't agreed to anything." Gasps echoed. Sophia's eyes filled with perfect, well-timed tears. "Madison, I thought you wanted me to be happy." Her words stabbed deep, twisting the knife of guilt they knew how to wield so well. But I didn't flinch. "Your happiness doesn't require my home, Sophia." The crowd turned against me, aunts, uncles, cousins, all chiming in. "It's family. She doesn't even have children. Sophia needs it more." I felt the walls close and every word a stone laid on top of me, crushing me. Still, I stood my ground. No, I said again louder this time, letting the words slice through the suffocating pressure. That's when my mother rose, storming across the dance floor, her face a mask of rage and humiliation. She stood 3 feet from me, microphone still in hand, her voice trembling with fury. "You selfish, ungrateful girl, after everything we've done for you." Her hand struck before I could react. The crack of her palm against my cheek echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. My diamond earring flew across the marble floor. Gasps turned to silence, absolute silence. 200 people held their breath as I stood there, cheek burning, head tilted from the force of her slap. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't even raise a hand to my face. Slowly, I walked across the ballroom, bent down, and picked up my earring. I clasped it back onto my ear, lifted my chin, and looked at her with a steadiness I didn't know I possessed. "Excuse me," I said softly, my voice echoing louder than any scream. Then I turned, congratulated my sister, and walked out. Behind me, chaos erupted. Voices clashed, chairs scraped, guests shouted. But I kept walking, each step deliberate, leaving their world and their expectations behind. When the ballroom doors closed behind me, I finally allowed myself to breathe. My cheeks still stung, but the silence in the corridor felt like oxygen compared to the suffocating judgment inside. I pressed the elevator button with a hand that didn't shake, though. Inside my chest felt like it was splitting open. The slap hurt, but what hurt more was the confirmation of what I had always known. Deep down, I was never truly a daughter to them, only an asset, a tool, a convenient sacrifice. They had paraded me in front of their friends, cornered me with their announcement, and when I refused to be humiliated into compliance, my own mother struck me. And 200 people watched. In the elevator, I pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls and then a text from Marcus Chen. Saw the live stream. "On standby, your call." Live stream. My stomach twisted. Someone had broadcast everything: the ambush, the refusal, the slap to the world outside those ballroom walls. I scanned the text again. Say the word. Marcus wasn't just my mentor, my CEO, and one of the most powerful men in the city. He also happened to own 40% of my father's company, and he had built safeguards around me that even I hadn't fully appreciated, like that obscure clause in my penthouse deed, the one that activated if I was ever coerced into surrendering it. I'd laughed when he insisted on it. Now I understood. He had known. He had seen women like me cornered, stripped of what they'd earned by families who couldn't stand to see them powerful. I typed back quickly, "Wait for my signal." When I reached my penthouse, I tossed the clutch on the counter and pressed an ice pack against my cheek. The cold bit into my skin, but it helped ground me. My phone buzzed again. Entering the ballroom now, Marcus wrote. I could picture it, him striding into that glittering room in his Armani suit flanked by lawyers. My father's face paling as he realized the man he had been chasing for months, desperate for a meeting, had just arrived uninvited. The next call came not from Marcus, but from Brian's younger brother, the one responsible for the live stream. His voice trembled as he whispered, "You need to see this. Your dad looks like he's going to faint. That Chinese guy in the suit, your name just came out of his mouth. Your mom screamed when she saw him." I closed my eyes. It had begun. Minutes later, Marcus called. "You're on speaker," he said. I could hear the stunned silence of the ballroom through the phone. Then his voice filled the room with a calm authority I'd heard dismantle competitors in board meetings. "Ladies and gentlemen, let me clarify something. Madison Hayes is not just a daughter being difficult tonight. She is my vice president of development, responsible for our entire Asia-Pacific expansion. The penthouse you all witnessed being demanded of her is part of her executive compensation package, and it is legally protected." Gasps rippled through the line. My father's voice cracked. "That's impossible." Marcus didn't waver. The Singapore deal, Madison led it. The Tokyo office, Madison built it. The Samsung partnership, every detail, Madison. Your daughter isn't exaggerating. She's a critical part of my company, and her property is not yours to take. My mother's shrill voice cut through. "You're lying." Marcus's tone sharpened, cold and precise. "Mrs. Hayes, what's been broadcast to over 20,000 viewers tonight is not a lie. It's assault, coercion, and conduct unbecoming of leadership. Richard Page, 47 of the shareholder agreement you signed 5 years ago, gives me the right to call an emergency board meeting within 24 hours. Between my 40% and the Jensen Trust's 15, you do the math. The silence on the other end was thick enough to choke on. I could almost see my father clutching papers with shaking hands, realizing he'd signed away his leverage years ago. My mother sputtered, "This is family business. The moment you made it public, it became my business," Marcus shot back. "And Madison's. Tell him to stop," my father pleaded into the speaker, his voice desperate now. I finally spoke. My voice was steady, though my cheeks still burned. "Too far. You think I went too far. You tried to strip me of my home. You let Mom hit me in front of 200 people, and now you're embarrassed because the world is watching." The background murmurs swelled into a wave of disbelief, shame, outrage, but not directed at me anymore. This time it was my parents under the spotlight. Marcus's voice filled the void again. "Here's what's going to happen. Richard, you will issue a public apology to Madison within 48 hours. You will acknowledge her achievements and her right to her property. Carol, you will do the same, or you will stay permanently away from her. Any attempt to guilt, manipulate, or pressure her again will trigger immediate legal action and shareholder intervention. Is that understood?" Their silence was answer enough. I closed my eyes, pressing the ice pack harder against my cheek, letting the sound of their downfall wash over me like cool water. For the first time that night, I allowed myself a small, quiet smile. The phone was still on speaker, the ballroom hushed on the other end. I could hear Sophia's sobs, the tremble in her voice as she cried. This was supposed to be my special day. Her tears had always been her sharpest weapon, and I could almost imagine the way her mascara streaked perfectly down her face, making her look like the fragile victim. "It still is," Marcus replied evenly, his tone clipped and professional. "But don't confuse special with entitled. Your sister owes you nothing. Tonight the only people who embarrassed you were your parents." Gasps rose from the crowd again. I pictured it all, the whispers, the sideways glances, the guests shifting uncomfortably in their chairs. My father's company clients were scattered across those tables. They had seen it all, the ambush, the coercion, the slap. And now Marcus Chen was standing there revealing truths they'd never believed about me. "Madison," my father's voice finally returned, small, almost pleading. "Please tell him to stop. We can fix this privately. You're our daughter." For the first time in my life, I heard desperation in his tone, but instead of softening, something inside me hardened like steel. "No," I said. "I'm not your resource to drain, I'm not your backup plan, and I'm not the daughter you get to claim only when it benefits you." Marcus's voice surged back, decisive and final. 48 hours. A real apology. Otherwise, I call the board and exercise my rights as a major shareholder. This is not negotiable. Then the line clicked dead. I lowered the phone and stood in my penthouse, looking out at the glittering skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. My cheeks still throbbed, but inside me something else stirred relief. Not because I had won against my family, but because for once I hadn't bent. For once I had chosen myself. Notifications exploded on my phone. Brian's brother's livestream had gone viral. In less than 2 hours, the clip of my mother slapping me had been shared thousands of times. Headlines began to appear on social media, entitled "Parents Demand Daughter's Penthouse at Wedding," and "She Refuses." Hashtags trended. The slap was already a meme. Strangers from across the world were taking sides, and most of them were on mine. I poured myself a glass of wine, the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. Tonight felt like one. Not because I was celebrating pain, but because I was tasting freedom. The next morning, I woke to hundreds of messages, some from colleagues who had seen the video offering support, some from distant relatives half apologizing, half excusing themselves. And then there were the business emails. 3 of my father's biggest clients had withdrawn contracts overnight. "Richard, I can't continue our partnership after what I saw. This reflects poorly on your company's values. Consider our contract terminated." Each line was another crack in the empire my father had built. And all of it, ironically, was caused not by me, but by his own greed and arrogance. By Monday morning, the fallout was undeniable. My father's expansion plans collapsed. 6 contracts were gone. Brian's family had called off the honeymoon until they assessed the family dynamics. Guests had returned their gifts. My mother's desperate social media rant only made things worse. screenshots spreading with captions like, "Now we know where the problem started." And in the midst of all this chaos, Marcus called me into his office. "The board wants to promote you," he said, his eyes steady on mine. I blinked. "Promote me? I just got slapped at a wedding." "You stood your ground under public humiliation. You protected company assets. You maintained composure in front of 200 witnesses and 20,000 online viewers. That's leadership." And it impressed the board. The promotion came with stock options, a raise, and more responsibility than I'd ever carried before. But instead of feeling burdened, I felt light. For the first time in years, I was being recognized not as the difficult daughter, but as the capable woman I had become. That evening, back in my penthouse, I transferred my bonus to a women's shelter. I wanted my victory to mean more than just a bigger paycheck. I wanted it to protect women like me, women who had been belittled, pressured, cornered by the very families who were supposed to love them. 47 hours later, my father's public apology appeared. Carefully written, clearly reviewed by lawyers, stiff but sufficient. "I apologize to my daughter Madison for my inappropriate behavior at a recent family event. I acknowledge her professional achievements and her right to her own property. This matter is now closed." Closed for him, maybe. For me, it was only beginning. My mother refused to apologize. Instead, she doubled down, painting herself as the victim. "Ungrateful daughter, corrupted by money," she wrote online. The comments flooded in beneath her post. "Lady, we saw the video. Narcissist alert. Now we know who the real problem is." Sophia texted me a week later. "You ruined my life. Brian's family thinks we're toxic. They're making us go to counseling before the wedding can move forward. I hate you." I stared at the message for a long moment before replying, "They're not wrong." Then I set the phone down and blocked her number. The weeks that followed felt like living in a storm's calm eye. Outwardly, the frenzy had passed, but beneath the surface, consequences rippled through every corner of my family's life. My father's company bled contracts. Partners pulled out one by one, unwilling to be associated with the man whose greed and cruelty had been exposed to the entire city. For years, he had tried to command respect through power and intimidation. Now all people saw was weakness, a man who couldn't even keep his own family together without resorting to public humiliation. My mother reacted differently. She doubled down as if denial could rewrite the narrative. She told anyone who would listen that I had chosen money over family, that I was brainwashed by corporate greed. But what she couldn't erase was the video. Everyone had seen the slap, heard the demands, witnessed the ambush. No matter how many stories she spun, the truth was immortalized in pixels replayed over and over again across social media. Sophia's life unraveled too. The counseling Brian's family insisted on didn't go well. She hated being told she had to take responsibility for anything. Entitlement had been woven into her since childhood, fed by my parents' constant coddling. Within 4 months, the marriage was over. Quietly, without spectacle, this time she signed divorce papers. She sent me one last bitter message: "I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted." I stared at it for a long while before replying, "I got what I earned. There's a difference." I blocked her number too. For the first time in my life, I created firm boundaries. I changed the locks on my penthouse. I gave building security a list of names that were never to be allowed entry. My parents, Sophia, the relatives who had laughed at me, the ones who had jeered when I said no. James, the doorman who'd known me for years, stopped me one afternoon. "Miss Hayes, I saw the video. Good for you. My daughter went through something similar. Family isn't always family, you know." His quiet solidarity meant more than most of the hollow apologies trickling in from distant cousins. I didn't make a dramatic announcement. I simply blocked my parents on social media, removed them from my life like cutting out a tumor. No explanations, no pleas for them to understand. Just silence. It was the first time I realized that silence itself can be the loudest boundary. Work became my refuge. The promotion Marcus secured for me expanded my responsibilities across 12 countries. I poured myself into it, building something lasting, something meaningful. Every decision I made, every deal I negotiated, reminded me that I was more than their scapegoat, more than the difficult daughter. Marcus became more than a boss. He became the mentor my father never was. One morning over coffee, he looked at me and said, The best revenge is a life well lived without them. I carried those words with me. Months passed. My penthouse, my sanctuary, became not just a home but a symbol. Every sunrise through those glass windows reminded me of what I'd built, of what I'd protected. The peace I felt there was a kind I'd never known in my parents' house, where every success of mine had been twisted into a flaw. Here, finally, I could breathe. The irony was almost poetic. While my parents' lives were collapsing, mine was flourishing. A feature in Forbes 40 Under 40 highlighted my innovative approach to Asian market expansion. Not a single word mentioned the wedding scandal. For once, I was recognized purely for my achievements, not my family drama. Through business contacts, I learned that my father had started therapy. Maybe it was too late. Maybe not. My mother, on the other hand, remained the same, telling anyone who would listen that I had abandoned family for fortune. But most people had seen the footage. They knew better. Sophia's divorce left her bitter and lonely. She texted me once, months after, saying, "You destroyed everything." I didn't answer. Some messages don't deserve replies. Instead, I found family elsewhere. At Hayes Capital, my colleagues became my siblings, celebrating victories together, supporting one another through setbacks. Marcus and his wife invited me to dinners, their daughters looking up to me with wide-eyed admiration. "You're proof," one of them told me, "that women don't have to shrink themselves to fit someone else's expectations." That sentence alone was worth more than all the hollow compliments my parents had ever given me. Here's what I learned from all of it. Blood doesn't make someone family. Respect does. Support does. And sometimes the most powerful word you can say to toxic relatives is nothing at all. I lost the family I was born into. But what I gained was worth so much more: self-respect, genuine relationships, and a life I built on my terms. Every morning I stand at my windows with a cup of coffee, watching the city awaken beneath me. And I whisper to myself, they couldn't take this from you. Not for lack of trying. If you're listening to my story now, maybe you've been there too. Maybe your family has demanded more than they ever gave, belittled your victories, or tried to make you feel guilty for choosing yourself. Hear me, your boundaries matter. Your peace matters. You don't owe anyone your hard-earned success just because you share DNA. And if you've ever had to choose between family approval and your own self-respect, know this, you're not alone. So tell me in the comments, do you believe family should always come first? Or do you believe, like I do, that peace and dignity are non-negotiable? Like this video if my story resonated with you. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to choose themselves. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about breaking free, setting boundaries, and finding strength where you never thought you had it. Remember, this blood is not a free pass to break your spirit. Choose people who choose you.